Welcome, everybody. It's good to be back with you. My name is Simon Turpin, Executive Director of Answers in Genesis, and continuing some of the interviews and talks with some of the leading apologists, creation apologists around the world. And I'm really pleased tonight to have with me Dr. Nagy Iskander. Before I ask Nagy to tell us a bit about himself, I'm going to just give you some of his background. Nagy is a retired medical doctor and he's a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England. So he's very well qualified to speak on tonight's subject. And Nagy retired a few years ago to go into full-time ministry because he does really have a passion to speak on creation and the Bible. So Nagy, good to have you with us.
So, thank you, Simon. It's lovely to be here, and I'm looking forward to our chat together.
Can you tell us some about your Christian background and how you got into creation apologetics?
Yeah, I was brought up in Cairo, in Egypt, in a Christian family, and I came to know the Lord as a young boy, and my parents had a great influence in my development as a Christian. And I finished my studies in medicine, and I came to Britain to do the fellowship of the Royal College of Surgeons. And I practiced surgery for 25 years in Britain. And I am interested in science because science is a wonderful thing that God has given us. And we are actually able to do science because there is a creator, a lawgiver, so we can follow the law. And I became very interested in science and the Bible. And I do television programs in Arabic about this subject, about the book of Genesis and the creation, evolution, the Big Bang, and all these events, and the flood of Noah, and all of these events that happened in history. And I have a program called Creation Answers, which are about 80 episodes, and another program called Question Mark, and another program called Creation Fact or Fiction, and so many others actually. And that's expanding, and that's why after 25 years practicing surgery in Britain, I decided to spend all my time just communicating the message of creation, evolution, and God's love and the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Wow, that's great. And I know your television program has actually reached millions of people in the Arabic world. Can you maybe tell us some of the testimonies that you've heard from that?
Yes, when we started broadcasting them in a Christian satellite station called Kingdom Sat, that goes worldwide. So I had a communication from Christians in Sydney, Australia, whom I don't know at all, but they watched the program and they asked me to go and present the program to them. And I went in October 2014. To do the program both in Arabic and English. And you know, Simon, at the end of the program, I asked the leaders that I would like to meet with Sunday school kids. And they gave me the children from 8 till 10, 11, and they came with the most difficult theological and scientific questions because they have an inquiring mind.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they are not inhibited, so they can speak their mind. And I think that's a great blessing. And from there, really, another Christian satellite station called El Karma, meaning the vine, which is stationed in Los Angeles in America, took me on air for lots of time, and they asked me to do programs with them and others, and started to expand really in a big way.
Wow, that's great. Well, tonight we're going to look at the uniqueness of humans. I'm going to hand over to you now, Nagy, but let me start by asking a question. Because evolutionists tell us all the time that human beings are 98% similar to chimpanzees. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can debate about the percentage because it is probably less than that. But let us accept the 98%. That's not the problem. But that really doesn't mean we came from apes at all. It means there is one designer who uses the same building blocks to build different things. Like an engineer, you can use the same building blocks to build a bridge, to build a house, to build a cathedral. So it doesn't mean at all that we came from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, Simon, the nearest insulin to our body is from the pigs. It doesn't mean we are cousins at all. But it means that the animals need insulin to burn glucose to form energy, and we humans need the insulin to burn glucose to form energy. So no wonder there is similarities. But the Bible is very clear, because we are made on the image of God. So we are unique. We didn't come as a result of reactions, chemical reactions or biological changes that happened before us to bring us to the human race.
Mm-hmm.
We are created as a unique group based in Adam and Eve, and then we are their descendants.
Yeah.
So there is a big difference between coming from a common ancestor, and one branch became the apes and the chimpanzees, and one branch became humans. There is major scientific problems actually with this way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that again is what the Bible explains to us clearly.
Great. So you're going to show us some of those problems tonight, right?
Yes. We will concentrate actually on the skeletal system, the skeleton, the skull, the spinal cord, the joints, and the arms and the fingers and all of that. It's a big topic, so we'll divide it into different sections in order to give it really enough time to understand every section proper. So we are the movements of walking, standing, and walking in two is completely different from walking in four. And we'll see that very clearly here in our presentation today. But I'd like to start with a little DVD from Sir David Attenborough, and the title, Who Do You Think You Are?
Let me take you on a journey. The journey to discover who you really are and where you came from. But you're not just going to sit there listening to me. You're going to be part of the experience. And you'll be able to examine some of the evidence for evolution along the way. If you have a look at your screens now, you can rotate the modern human skull. And you'll see the domed forehead, the small face, the small front teeth, and on the lower jaw, the chin. If you keep looking through your screen, you will see Australopithecus afarensis, an extinct hominid who lived about 3 million years ago. Deep anglers live at a declination below 1,000 meters where there's no light, so they're living in total darkness. It's our fishy ancestors that first developed some of our most fundamental features, our skeleton, jaws, and 4 limbs. Hold up your screen and look through it one last time. You'll see the tree that represents all of life, past and present. We started this film with a question: who do you think you are? And we can end it with an answer. You are, undoubtedly, like every other living thing on earth, a member of one single family of life, descended from a common ancestor living thousands of millions of years ago.
So, Simon, this is the answer that Sir David Attenborough gives us. Who do you think you are? You are part of this family of creatures that came from common ancestors millions and millions years ago. We don't know how it came to the earth, by the way, but this DVD really raises few questions which we would like to address in this program. I'd like just to stress we have great respect for Sir David Attenborough. I like his programs, I like to watch them, but at the same time, that gives us the right to ask questions. And the question that is rising from this is the clip when it says the fishy ancestors, because the fish developed a spinal cord and a skull and a jaw that is really became human later on.
Yeah.
I'd like to put a big question here. What is the mechanism that can convert on a spinal cord of a fish to my spinal cord as humans? We'll study the spinal cord today in a little bit of detail, and we'll find it is very, very complicated. And even if you give me millions and millions and millions of years, passing of time is not a creative power. So passing of time will not add information to the spinal cord of the fish to bring it to the very complicated spinal cord of the human. Mm-hmm. And that applies to the brain and to the skull. The other issue that Sir David Attenborough raised here is an intermediate they call Australopithecus afarensis, which is simply called Lucy.
Yeah.
And this was discovered in Ethiopia area in Africa. And he gave us impression that it was walking straight on two legs and a feet. And really, they never found a full foot. And they found what they found as a skeleton is about 40%. And they never found a full skull. So in order to confirm that we are standing, we need all these elements complete. And he gave us an impression that it is an ape which is walking. And he said it is extinct 3 million years ago. So we don't have a picture of that creature at all. Mm-hmm. We don't have a digital picture. We don't have any evidence that it walked the way he presented in this presentation. So we'll take our journey through our skeleton system, and that's how we stand and walk and balance. And these are very interesting areas really to study.
Yeah.
So let me just first of all put this picture here. This is the skeleton that we have as humans. Can you see any similarity between this and the fish? I don't really. I don't at all. But this is the complicated system that is essential for us to stand, to balance, and to walk. So in our study, we will concentrate on 3 things. Standing, because standing in 2 is a very important thing, and it needs lots of things to be in place properly in order to achieve an erect position, to stand properly. And then to walk, and to balance this walking and the feet and the mechanism of the joint when we walk. Yeah. And then the balance. The balance is achieved by 2 main things. By the cerebellum, which is underneath the brain. The brain is called the cerebrum, and the cerebellum is mainly for balance. And we have another mechanism which is in the inner ear, which will allow us to something called semicircular canals. We'll discuss that in future episodes, and we'll be able to see how our balance is adjusted. So it's a very complicated thing. I don't personally think we came from a fish. And I don't think that the fish is able to modify itself to come to these very complicated structures. Because in order to come from the simple to the complex, you need added information. And information is not material. Information comes from intelligence. Yeah. So in order for this fish to develop a complicated spinal cord, in order to develop a lung to breathe, in order to have a circulatory system, this needs a different design. It's like the computer program. It works if you add more information to do more functions. So it's more complicated really in the human body.
So is time then irrelevant to the evolution of man? It doesn't matter how much time.
You can add as much time as you like, but time is not a creative power.
Yeah.
Actually, time will allow things to decay rather than to build them up. So it works against evolution. But let us say it is there, but it cannot add information by itself.
So the evolutionist is basically hoping that time will solve their problems.
No, the time cannot solve the problem.
Yeah.
And the mutation, which is copying mistakes, will not solve the problem either. Because if you have a photocopier and you are copying a document, and the copy is worse than the original, it is not an improvement. And mutation is copying mistakes. So really, there is no mechanism to take us from simple structure to complex unless you add information on the genes, on the DNA. to give them instructions, to build new proteins, new organs, and so on. So we will concentrate on the skeleton and how we walk. That's one aspect, but you can apply that to the circulatory system, to the nervous system, to the digestive system, to the muscles, to a lot of things.
Yeah.
So let me just first of all differentiate between moving and walking, because there are organisms that can move, but they don't walk. So the jellyfish here, it can move. So the jellyfish is moving, but it is not walking. Walking involves using our limbs to walk. And if you walk erect, you have two limbs to walk on.
Yeah.
So let us just go to the jungle and look at an ape and see how they walk. And at the same time, I'd like you to observe the upper limb, the front limbs. You find them longer than the lower limb. Just we'll look at this. It's a very short walk. We all know that, but it's nice just to have it in our mind now. Yeah. So I really would like everyone to look at the upper limb here. You find it is longer than the lower limb. The foot is completely different from the feet we have. The spinal cord, the skull here, is continuous here with the spinal cord and is continuous with human as well. Mm-hmm. But the shape of the backbone here is completely different from the shape of the backbone that allows us to stand straight and to be able to walk. So
it doesn't walk upright like humans.
Yes, exactly. And even the apes can walk few steps right, but the natural way of walking is on four. Mm-hmm. And you can see even the skull here and the set of the eyes. If you are walking like this on four, the set of the eyes has to be higher up a little bit to be able to see in front of you. But when you are standing straight, the setting of the eye is in the right place to be able to see around you. Mm-hmm. The movement of the neck, all of that is completely different. So coming from a fish to this, I don't think there is mechanism to allow these changes to happen. And if somebody knows about this mechanism, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah. We will respect your view completely. And please give us the proper scientific evidence. Don't give us some magazine wrote such and such. We'd like a scientific paper, and we'll be very happy to address it very respectfully and enter into a dialogue to understand the other views. So this is how we walk as humans, and you will find that the screen will change to give us the way we walking here. I like to ask everybody really watching us, can you see similarities between what you have seen in the ape and what you have seen in humans? There is none, really.
None.
The skeleton is different. The length of the upper limb, we have the lower limb is longer than the upper limb in humans. So in the ape, it is the reverse. So what is the mechanism that allows the ape to change all of this complicated structure to come to the human? There is none. You need to change the program. And in order to change the program, that is the genes and the DNA, you need an intelligence to do that. You need a creator to do that. So it is more logical to believe in the beginning God created. That makes sense. Scientific sense as spiritual sense as well. Now, let me just show you how we walk. This is the pelvis, and this is the spinal cord here, and this is the hip bone and the hip joint, and this is called the ilia. We don't need to worry about the names too much. This is the femur, the big thigh bone, and this is the knee, and then there are two bones here, tibia and fibula, and then you come to the ankle, which is a very important joint actually, and then you come to the foot, and in the foot there are many joints, and they are really synchronized to work together to allow to carry our weight in something called 3-point fixation. And at the same time, when we walk, and even if we walk on an uneven surface, how we can keep our foot properly on the ground and at the same time not fall on each side.
Yeah.
All of that's controlled by a nervous system, controlled by muscles, controlled by tendons, by ligaments, and by circulation. We need energy to come to this place. And we need as well all the waste products to come and get oxygenated again in the lung. So we need all this complicated thing. I'm just saying it very simple, but it is much, much more complicated when we look at it closely. So that's how we walk, just to have a feeling of the whole thing. So this is the skeleton of humans. We need the bones. We have about 206 bones in our body, and that's constant to everybody. We can calculate them as 208 because the sternum here, this is the bone in the chest here, is divided into 3 parts. The manubrium sternum, body of the sternum, and zivi sternum. So if you consider this as 1 bone, we are 206 bones. If you consider them as 3, we are 208. So just to clarify that for people to understand. And the bones are very important for motion because without this skeleton, we need the skull to protect the brain, which is very important. Mm-hmm. We need these sockets of the eye to protect the eye, and muscles inside to move the eye in different directions. We need different joints. So something like the elbow, the shoulder, we need really great movement in the shoulder. We need it to be able to do lots of things like this, right? So we need more movement than stability. Mm-hmm. But when you come to the hip, you need more stability than movement because this is carrying the weight of all of this. The hands, in the forearm, we have 2 bones which rotate over each other to allow us to do these movements here. And that's controlled by muscles. There are 20 muscles here controlling this movement, and ending by tendons to allow me to have the grip. And the thumb, the control of the thumb is a very interesting and complicated thing. I don't think we came from a fish. I find that really scientifically needing a real sort of answer. And I'll be delighted to hear an answer if somebody got one. Mm-hmm. So in order to stand and walk, we need a skeleton. We need the skull. We need the lower jaw for speaking and eating and all of that. We need the teeth and all of these things. And then we need the spinal cord at the back here. And we need the chest cage, the ribs, to control the very important vital organs, the heart, the lungs, the big vessels, and the nerves that are passing through. We need all of that to protect these vital organs. In order to breathe, we have this thoracic cage which is expanding and recoiling, and it's all adjusted beautifully. That's different than the fish that we have seen in the presentation that then you have the pelvis and all the organs inside them. Then you come to the joints. So we have the hip, we need it to be very strong. We have the knee, we need flexibility in the knee and the movement and the locking mechanism. When I stand, there is a little movement from muscle called popliteus muscle to lock the knee to be like a big column so it can carry my weight. So that is the skeleton. And then you come to the muscles that operate that skeleton. And then you come to these are the muscles and the names of the muscles. We have about 600 muscles roughly in our bodies. So in order to say this came by chance and time and laws of nature, I find that very difficult to understand from the scientific point of view. This is designed, and designed in a very accurate way and a very intelligent way. And it is just amazing, really, how all of that will work together, because you need a central control to all these movements. So this is the spinal cord. We have the brain here, which is the high command center, if you like. And this is the spinal cord at the back. And from that, there are nerves coming out to feed into all our body, really, the upper limb, the lower limb. And this is a very complicated structure. We can talk about it in another session, but we are talking about the skeleton only. And as you can see, it is very complicated. And the skeleton is not only for movements. The marrow of the bones is a great factory to produce red blood cells and reduce some of the immune cells as well. Then you need, for that to work, you need a circulatory system. So you need a heart to pump the blood. And the blood will go from the big vessels to smaller vessels to smaller to come to capillaries in order to deliver oxygen to the tissues one by one. And then as a result of the metabolism in the tissues, there will be a product that you want to get rid of. So this blood will go to the kidneys to filter what is not needed, and the rest will go, or after it goes here, it will go to the lungs to get oxygenated again and recirculate. So that is much, much more complicated than the fish. And I don't think there is, if you give me millions and millions of years, that will not transform a fish into this complicated structure. So that is the walking again, just to give you an impression of how we walk. So this is the ankle from the back. And these joints are very, very well designed to do this function. And there are ligaments, you know, if you twist your ankle and the pain you have and the swelling, because some of these ligaments are just torn or stretched. So they are really designed properly to allow us to do this. And then this comes to something called calcaneum here, and then small bones and tarsals and metatarsal bones to keep us steady on our walking. So that doesn't happen by chance and time and laws of nature. So back again to the vertebral column and the spinal cord. This is the vertebral column on human, and look at the curvatures, which we will discuss in a minute. They are very, very important to be that way. That's completely different from the ape, completely different. So this is the vertebrae, and this is called the body of the vertebrae, and these are the posterior part of the body, and there is a canal in the middle. And through this canal, the spinal cord passes through, and it gives the branches between the vertebrae to go and feed into the muscles that operate the joints and operate the body.
Called the cervical spine curves slightly inward. The mid-back or thoracic spine curves outward. The outward curve of the thoracic spine is called kyphosis. The low back, also called the lumbar spine, curves slightly inward. An inward curve of the spine is called lordosis. The lumbar spine is made up of the lower 5 vertebrae. Doctors often refer to these vertebrae as L1 to L5. The lowest vertebra of the lumbar spine, L5, connects to the top of the sacrum, a triangular bone at the base of the spine that fits between the 2 pelvic bones. There is a joint on each side of the sacrum.
Right. It is just, this is just the summary. I will show you the whole thing in a minute in detail. But this is just to show you the curvature of the cervical spine, and then the thoracic spine, and then the lumbar spine, and then the sacrum. And these curvatures are very important to keep the balance of standing. And then that goes to this sacrum, which joins two big bones, the pelvic bones, which are connected here, and then comes to the joint of the hip. This is really very, very important to be that complicated. And between each vertebra, there is a disc. And this disc is formed of two parts, something called fibrous tissue, which is ring-like, and then there is something soft in the middle to take the pressure and the temp and the pressure when we move. So it's really wonderful to study that. I'll take you to the last video here, because we'll not be able to cover everything in this session, but I'll take you to one other DVD to explain that in a little bit of detail.
The human spine is made up of 24 spinal bones called vertebrae. The vertebrae are stacked on top of one another to create the spinal column. The spinal column gives the body its main upright support. From the side, the spine forms three curves. The neck, called the cervical spine, curves slightly inward. The mid-back, or thoracic spine, curves outward. The outward curve of the thoracic spine is called kyphosis. The low back, also called the lumbar spine, curves slightly inward. An inward curve of the spine is called lordosis. The lumbar spine is made up of the lower 5 vertebrae. Doctors often refer to these vertebrae as L1 to L5. The lowest vertebra of the lumbar spine, L5, connects to the top of the sacrum, a triangular bone at the base of the spine that fits between the two pelvic bones. There is a joint on each side of the sacrum that connects the sacrum to the pelvis. This joint is called the sacroiliac or SI joint. Each vertebra is formed by a round block of bone called a vertebral body. The lumbar vertebral bodies are taller and bulkier compared to the rest of the spine. This is partly because the lumbar spine has to withstand pressure from the body weight and from daily actions like lifting, carrying, and twisting. A bony ring attaches to the back of each vertebral body. When the vertebrae are stacked on top of one another, these rings form a hollow tube called the spinal canal. This bony tube surrounds the spinal cord as it passes through the spine. Just as the skull protects the brain, the bones of the spinal column protect the spinal cord. The spinal cord extends from the brain to the L2 vertebra. Below this level, the spinal cord splits into a bundle of nerves that goes to the lower limbs and pelvic organs. The Latin term for this bundle of nerves is cauda equina, meaning horse's tail. As the spinal cord travels from the brain down through the spine, it sends out nerves on the side of each vertebra called nerve roots. These nerve roots join together to form the nerves that travel throughout the body and form the body's electrical system. The nerve roots that come out of the lumbar spine form the nerves that go to the lower limbs and pelvis. The thoracic spine nerves go to the abdomen and chest. The nerves coming out of the cervical spine go to the neck, shoulders, arms, and hands. It is sometimes easier to understand what happens in the spine by looking at a single spinal segment. The spinal segment includes 2 vertebrae, the intervertebral disc between, the 2 nerve roots that leave the spinal cord at that level, and the small facet joints that link each level of the spinal column. An intervertebral disc is made up of 2 parts. The center, called the nucleus pulposus, is spongy and acts like a shock absorber to cushion the force between each vertebra. The nucleus is surrounded by a series of strong ligamentous rings called the annulus fibrosus. Ligament one bone to another. The annulus fibrosus is actually a special ligament that connects 2 vertebrae together. Between the vertebrae of each spinal segment are 2 facet joints. The facet joints are located on the back of the spinal column. There are 2 facet joints between each pair of vertebrae, one on each side of the spine. A facet joint is a small bony knob that sticks out from the vertebral body at the back of the lumbar spine. Where these knobs meet they form a synovial joint that connects the two vertebrae. The facet joints of the lumbar spine move together in a sliding motion as you bend forward and backward. The surfaces of the facet joints are covered by articular cartilage. Articular cartilage is a smooth, rubbery material that covers the ends of most joints. It allows the bone ends to move against each other smoothly without friction. Two spinal nerve roots exit the sides of each spinal segment, one on the left and one on the right. As the nerves leave the spinal cord, they pass through a small bony tunnel on each side of the vertebra called a neural foramen. The lumbar spine is supported by a complex set of ligaments and muscles. Ligaments are arranged in layers and run in multiple directions where they connect the bones of the lumbar spine to the sacrum and pelvis. The muscles of the low back are also arranged in layers. Those closest to the surface are covered by a thick tissue called fascia. The middle layer runs up and down over the lower ribs, chest, and low back. They blend in the lumbar spine to form a thick tendon that binds the bones of the low back, pelvis, and sacrum. The deepest layer of muscles runs along the back surface of the spine. These muscles connect the lumbar vertebra, pelvis, and sacrum, and coordinate movement with the muscles of the abdomen to help hold the spine steady during activity. We hope watching this video will help you better understand your orthopedic care.
Yeah, this is really just to give you a flavor about the complexity of this system and the wonder of this system. I'll go back to the question that we started with. Who do you think you are? And David Attenborough, Sir Attenborough, said, because the fish developed a spinal cord, that was the development that allowed us to have this complicated system. I have a question mark about that, Simon.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing that we just saw, the design and the uniqueness of the human body. And what you've basically shown us is that time, chance can never evolve those complicated, intelligently designed systems.
Impossible, really impossible. Give me as much time as you like, millions of years. Chance and time and laws of nature will not create this wonderful system. And we're just talking about the spine. We haven't talked about the joints yet. We haven't talked about the muscles, the general movement, the movement of the foot and the feet. It is a wonderful, wonderful study. So really, it's great that we have the chance to share with our viewers these things, and I hope we'll continue in another session.
Yeah, we're going to look at those things in another episode. But I hope, having watched what Dr. Nagy Iskander has just shown us, has really helped you understand how we are uniquely designed. We're not evolved creatures. We have value, we have worth, we have dignity because we are made in God's image. So I want to thank you, Nagy, for bringing that presentation to us tonight, and we'll see the rest in a further episode. So I pray that you've been blessed by watching this episode, and please do join us again when Nagy comes back in another date. Thank you.